welcome to FACEHAMMER, and we are going to talk about the worst Battletome in Age of Sigmar. Just kidding. So to contextualise this a little bit, over the weekend I got together some guys and played some games of Warhammer, and I proxied a Sons of BEHEMAT army and had 4 games of it, and basically tried out one of the lists that we talked about on the last show, which you can check out on our channel, where we go through the book and all the rules and all the abilities. So if you want to know what everything does, then check that video out.
I'll put it in the video here. So
yeah, awesome. And so basically the weekend's over, our video went out. Thanks for everyone who checked that out. It's done really well for us. Thank you. Really pleased with that engagement.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things that I've seen online is there's quite a lot of negativity around the Sons of BEHEMAT Battletome, and specifically around the competitiveness for match play, which is what we tend to focus on. So talking about, how viable they are as a tournament army and things like that. And I wanted to...
Even if you're not match play, though, it's just you want to know that your army's going to have a chance on the table, period, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a tournament. It could be you and...
No, but I mean, a lot of the conversations
are
from a match play perspective, and we talk from a match play perspective. It does, obviously, it cascades down to garage gamers and club gamers, because at the end of the day, you generally play those sort of rule sets and points and those scenarios. So it's the same sort of thing, but I'm talking about the pitch battle sort of context of the Battletome, whether that's at a tournament or at a garage, it's irrelevant. But so what I wanted to do really is just go through some of my findings from playing some games, address some of the comments that have been said online, particularly because I myself am going to do the army. I've purchased the army, which was not a small undertaking, which is another subject that we could get into. But I think I just wanted to go through like some of the things that is not apparently obvious when you read the Battletome to when you actually put stuff on a table and play some games, basically. So when it actually hits the actual physical
when it hits the neoprene,
rather than it gets down on the battle mat, which is where a lot of people think you'll be crying for the next round to be over because you've just lost every game, which I don't think is true. And obviously, like, I just want to say that, we're not saying this for any reason other than this is what we think. It's not if I didn't think they were good, I would tell you, and there are some caveats, there are some weaknesses, obviously. But I just wanted to go through that, and I thought would be quite good is to, me and Byron had a bit of a chat on Saturday after the gaming and come up with a different list.
We came up with an interesting list.
Yeah.
Properly. Yeah. Like it's there's one thing and the list ends up quite different for having it as an option, we think. So,
and I want to talk about that list and why I've gone into that direction, and then also I thought it'd be a good idea to go through the Generals Handbook scenarios and basically say, these are the scenarios. How do I think the army's gonna perform in those scenarios? And obviously that'll be dictated a little bit by the list design, which I'll touch on. But I think that, and also I've done the same with the auxiliary objectives. So I've put my own personal ranking based on a very limited sort of experience, but I have played a few games of it, and obviously being part of the playtest, seen things around. So
and also it's like, sorry Brian, I didn't want to talk over you. It's also like when you do the rankings, it's about how you think the army will perform in the objective. Like with regardless of what it's in front of. I mean, obviously these get skewed. If it's a combat army, if it's a shooting army, if someone's going to come and fight you, you'll do better. If someone's going to shoot you, you're probably not going to do as good.
If you're playing one job KO, caveat, none of this will matter. Probably. That's right on the other end of the extreme examples. But every army has some things that really don't work against it, and they might not be the best things in the game. They might just be paper to its rock or vice versa.
Yeah, and I think that's important, and we will touch on what I think are the good and bad matches, and I'll talk about the games. So I think probably get straight into it, so we're not waffling too much. Cool. But essentially, the list that I took was the Breaker list, and that was the one that you can see on the screen now, which is the Gatebreaker General with Louder Than Words, which is the +2 attacks on his portcullis attack. His flail, and then the enchanted portcullis to give him a 6-up death save, because I figured the longer you stay around in the fight, the better. I took
so
another.
You've gone for middle ground there. You've not gone full defensive. You've not gone full offensive.
No, so I figured getting the extra attacks was important because it mitigates your hit rolls and things like that.
Yeah.
I also took another Gatebreaker for more damage because I think they do the most damage out of the mega-gargants. I took a kraken-eater purely for the
skills.
Yeah, for dribbling the objective around. And I took 3 man crushers as a unit. Give me 50 points left over, which allows me to generally get a triumph in most cases.
Which they wear pretty well as an army.
Yeah. I mean, reroll to hits is amazing. I mean, they're all good. Reroll saves is particularly strong. And, even reroll to wound is particularly good. Now, with the breaker, you can pick a loathing, so it gives you +1 to hit. And I took the idiots waving flags, so it's command models, which is okay. But obviously, against like a big monster or a hero, it does make a difference of what you're playing against. So I'm not sure it's the best one. I think after playing more games, you would say, oh, actually, it's better to be better against heroes than it is against units, because against units, you're generally going to do a lot of damage anyway.
Would you pick the armor one for that reason?
Yeah, but it doesn't work on heroes. It only works on units. I think one of them only works on heroes, but not on monsters. So they're kind of limited. So I think the command one is you get that more often, but the things you get it against maybe isn't the most useful. But that's what I played anyway. So went into game 1. I'm not going to go through blow for blow everything that happened, but there's some interesting learning points. So I played, obviously the people playing never played against Sons of BEHEMAT, so there's that to consider. Played focal points against Big Waaagh, quite a good list. And because my army is a 4-drop, I always got the choice of deployment, and I know that there is some comments online about there's no battalions, you can't be low drop, but 4-drop is a low drop army.
Yeah, 5 or less is what I'd consider to be low. Now, if you want to guarantee it, and by guarantee I mean 90+% of the time, I think probably you'd like tone to be 4 or less, with especially these days 3 or less being a good idea, but 4 is pretty low.
So it allowed me to give the first turn away to the opponent, and what that really allows you to do is at the end of their turn, you capture your objective so you can kick it in your first turn, which is the important bit about we're playing focal points, and essentially the kraken-eater would be set up so he could kick one of the objectives towards the middle of the table. And then you should be able to keep your army fairly compact and contest all the objectives, because you count as 20 models, 10 models per normal gargant. It's very hard for them to get that off you, because even if they come in and attack you, you generally count as 20. Even if you've taken 34 wounds, you still count as 20. So it's not like a unit of 20 guys. If you do 15 wounds to it, it's only 5 men left.
Yeah.
And you can also put a lot of volume of capture power in a small space, because you can have 3 things within 6 inches of an objective, and that's 60
overlapping,
Yeah, whereas you could never fit 60 infantry in that space because it's too small an area. And I think
you can block up zones and then make it so other people can't get much there. And if you get 1 there, then you're like, I think that's one of the immediately immeasurable power areas of the book is the ability to get that much density, like scoring density, for lack of a better phrase, scoring density within a tiny zone. Just like delivering damage in a tiny compact area is a powerful thing, delivering scoring in a compact area is a very powerful thing, because you could just stand in the way and then win the game if you've got the ability to do that.
Especially if you can move the objectives into an area where in focal points you only really need to have to control the 3. I'm playing against a combat army which only can fight me to do damage. If I set my men up in a very complementary way, that if they charge 1 mega-gargant, they've probably got to commit 3 or 4 things to kill it, and then you get to counter them. Especially going second, like you're making them go first, you're always on the chance for a double. You're never in danger of being doubled. So they can't kill 1 mega-gargant, win the turn roll, kill the other mega-gargant, because you're on that chance until like turn 3 or 4 and you've had your double already. But if you get a double, it's pretty devastating. So essentially what happened was I got a double, wiped the army out, basically left him with a couple units left and won the game. We re-racked, actually, because everyone was still playing, and our game lasted about 25 minutes. And James, who was playing with Big Waaagh, put his army in corners. He teleported. He killed one of my giants. He debuffed the other giant. So he obviously immediately played a much better game. He killed that mega-gargant in a one-er. I got the turn. I went in. He won the turn. I didn't get a double. I managed to use the man crushers to break coherency by grabbing and picking up savage orcs to break his big unit of 30.
Another unique strength of the book.
Yeah, and I managed to win on scenario we were into turn 3. I'd killed most of his stuff, but I was ahead on points. So it mathematically couldn't catch me. So although I lost 2 of my mega-gargants, out of my 3, I'd still won the game at that point. And I think this is a strength of the army, that you keep your capture power, and it's very easy to get up early on objectives. And it takes quite a lot of commitment to wipe out a mega-gargant in a one-er. So I think he used 6 gore grunters with +1 damage, teleporting and charging me, and the Maw Crusher to take out one of them.
Yep.
So
how many attacks are those gore grunters? There's 90-something attacks.
Something like that. I mean, you get 4. You get 4 per pig and 3 per rider. So it's fairly a lot, but it's damage 2, and it's got rend, and it's a lot of rolls. And
I mean, it's just a big investment of models to again, I'm just sort of highlighting that you need a fully buffed up unit of 6 gore grunters plus a Maw Crusher to go in and wipe one to do 35 wounds.
Could have got lucky and done it with the Maw Crusher, but to be honest, to do 35 wounds in a 1 is quite hard. So he came in and didn't really get that job done. He killed 1. I was able to countercharge, and one of the things I found, which was particularly devastating, was the mortal wounds on the charge. So when people look at the big guys, they look, they're only damage 2, which is something I've seen people go, why are they damage 2? But what you've got to remember is that they do D6 damage on the charge. They've got a shooting attack. They stick around, so they do more rounds of combat before they die. And they degrade slightly, but it takes 12 wounds to knock you down 1 bracket. That's a third of your wounds. Most monsters start losing after 2 or 3 wounds. So they're particularly good at absorbing a spike of damage and just not really being that affected. And actually, when you look at their attack profile and you think, I've got this weapon and I hit you and it's only 2 damage, but you've got 10 attacks. So that's 20 damage potential. And I know some people have said, they should be damage 5 and have less attacks. But as soon as you have that, the consistency of your damage drops off a cliff.
Everyone's played with dragons, right? D6 damage.
So, I'd rather have more attacks at a consistent damage than less attacks at a high damage, because 1 attack missing is you lost 5 damage. You've lost D6 damage. So
that's why you went for the flail plus 2 attacks.
Yeah, and I think the point is that their profile might look a bit weird. You might look at it and go, why have they got loads of attacks at low damage, and this has got a 3 damage attack, and that's in the game, something else has got a 5 damage attack. It's but you want the consistency of the damage, and if it helps you to imagine them swinging through the unit rather than an individual hit that does a massive spike. But if they hit a monster, you could think of it as 1 hit, but you just work it out with multiple rolls. And I think that the danger of an army like this, if it was all big D6 damage or big damage but low attacks, it'd be so inconsistent that in match play, you just wouldn't be able to bank on, and it'd be really spiky.
I mean,
if they had 4 attacks. Oh, sorry, Byron. Yeah, it's if they're
playing with Alariel, she's a really hard, difficult model to play with, and people either have the opinion that she's broken or underpowered in combat, because if it gets through, it's epic, and if it doesn't hit, it doesn't matter.
If it whiffs, stacking minuses against those big, those low number of attacks with high volume becomes even more important then. So your massive giants with 5 attacks each with loads of damage. If you've got a way to minus that, but minus them to hit by 2, that literally neuters them, because if they're -2 to hit and they're hitting on 3s, then that just means that their 5 attacks are probably going to hit with 1 or 2. By the time you get 1 wound through, I'd rather have more attacks again with a lower.
And that's the strength for the mortal wounds on the charge, because there's no hit roll. it's not in the combat phase. You don't get hit first, so you can even charge like your 3 mega-gargants into something and do 3d6 mortal wounds to it before it even swings. Yeah. So that's really powerful. And I've seen a lot of comments like, "Oh, they'll die on the first turn," but if you've got 3 mega-gargants, that's 105 wounds with a 4-up save. So effectively, you'd have to do 210 wounds in one turn. I mean, what army can do that? And
quite often people are going to have a 6-up. They're going to have 5 extra wounds. They might be next to mystical. There's multiple things that would make that slightly harder. And if anyone has ever played against a Great Unclean One, is a good example. If anyone's ever played against a Great Unclean One and taken it down to 2 wounds remaining, and it's healed up, and they know how hard that is when you've taken the entire within range effective damage of your army, put it into one location and your objective is to kill that model, and you haven't killed it, how hard it is and how gutting it is when you don't. That's what playing against this army is like, because it doesn't get to heal, but it's also got twice as many wounds, and there's 3 of this big thing. And I just think that their gross wounds in one location is something that hasn't been in the game before. Like, we're not used to this unless you're playing like a 1,200 point Khorne Dragon. It's unique, isn't it?
And I think it's so unique. You've got to play games of it to get the context of how much resilience you get in a small space and how much damage you have in a small space. Because the spatial footprint, to coin a pun of the army, it is important, because you're able to get lots of capture power, lots of damage, and lots of wounds in a small space. And actually, not many people can deliver a lot of damage into a small space. Which makes
they can wipe out a 30 block of, like, a unit of half guard. You can get something here, something here, something in the front, do some spells. But especially if you know how to bodyguard your big guys, I think that's one of the real strengths is, like, getting like 5. There's very few things that you played against. I presume it was Gore Grunters that killed one in one turn with like a war beat on them or something.
Yeah, with 2 extra damage and a Maw Crusher. So that was just talked about when you dropped off the call. But yeah, so what do you want to say, Les? So Les, what do you want to say?
Oh, I was going to say it's very like you were saying about the amount of damage that it puts out. If you're playing this army and you mince your giant directly into 30 Witch Elves, then it will die probably. But if you are smart and you tag it on the corner so that only 4 of those Witch Elves are fighting, they have to pile into you. You're gonna end up doing a lot more damage. That's like, there was a thing that I saw which was like, how did I lose like the 30 block of Hearthguard Berserkers to the giants? And it's very easy when you get 2 giants tagged on either corner, and you're in a block, because then all of these models in the middle, if you play the rules correctly, have to pile. The army, the unit has to split with the pilings, because you can't then just maximize pilings this way. The person I played is very smart as well and puts a unit of giants outside of, like, directly in front of me 5 inches away, which means I'm out of range to be able to pile in and hit them as well. So it then minimizes the amount of attacks that I can bring to each of those things that I need to kill, and then they just wail on me. And it's all about positional play. Like, a lot of people don't. It's like, if you push a big monster into the center of 30 models, then it'll die. If you're smart and you think about the way that people pile in, how many times in games do people go, I'm going to tag this unit on the corner here, and then I'm going to line up, you've got a 3-inch pile in and a 1-inch reach, so I'm going to line up this model 5 inches in front of the unit, so you can't maximize your pilings towards that monster, because you have to pile in towards the closest model, which is directly forward, so you can't then swamp the thing that's tagged on the corner. It's all about being smart about how you play, and in isolation, a big monster into 30 guys that's like circle it, you're gonna lose.
So again, that was the next game I played against OBR, and so to give you an example of this, so there was a big unit of Mortek Guard. They had a Harvester behind them. They were buffed. They had empowered Nadrite weapons, reroll shields, empowered Nadrite shields. They were backed up by a Liege Cavalos with +1 attack. They had 2 units of Stalkers on the edges. I killed it all by charging it, doing lots of mortal wounds. And even I rolled 3 1s for my mortal wounds onto the Mortek Guard. But the unit of Little Giants, with being able to pick up models and kill them, you can, just within 3, you just pick them up, roll loads of dice, loads of rend, lots of 3-inch reach. So the stomp attacks and the death grip attack and stuff like that, just reaching over and grabbing into the key things. And the Harvester I killed with shooting. So I threw rocks at it until it died. I think I left it on 1 wound. Then the charge, I was able to tag it because I got round the side using Longshanks. And then I did D6 mortals to it and took it off. So basically, it allowed me then to not worry about the Harvester. So, and also in the first game, I took the 11, 12, 13 wounds, something like that, off the Maw Crusher by range. Because they've got high rend, high damage. You know, it's a high rend damage 4 attack from the Gatebreakers, and you're chucking lots of dice. Yes, it only hits on a 4, but the point is, you get a couple of them through, they're 4 damage, it's probably going to get through the armor save at 3 rend. It's like, well, that's a lot of damage at range. You've got a 12-inch move, an 18-inch shot, that's quite a long threat range. So even that is enough to chip away. And then even if you hit something, then you charge it, and you do the mortals, you're probably going to kill it. And with a 3-inch pile in and a 3-inch reach, you can combo charge something, wipe it out, pile in, and kill something behind it. They are, in my opinion, in a combat against a combat army, they're a very scary prospect. And luckily, I did play free sort of combat. He did have a Mortek crawler, but basically they were combat armies. So one of the things that in that OBR was in Total Commitment. So he had some Kavalos Death Riders, and there was a little bit of trickery with running around the sides, and I got a key turn to stop him double capturing my 2 home objectives. And I think one of the things that people say, you've got to leave your objectives behind, and you kind of do, and just hope that whatever they run onto it, you get the chance to go and bash it off. But you kind of want to fight people, so you got to kind of force people onto your objectives, or into you. And that mission is can be a bit difficult because they are spread out at the edges of the board, and you want stuff in the middle of the table.
I think as well, like when you say about like leaving your home objective, maybe it's just the armies that I've played, but like over the years I've played a lot of Stormcast. 9 times out of 10, I haven't got a unit of 30 guys on a home objective. I've got 5 Liberators or 10 Judicators, or something along those lines. Maybe it's just the way that people think. Like in most armies, you tag the objective with the minimum amount of models that you can to keep it safe, unless you've got a wealth of bodies, unless you're playing Gloomspite, unless you're playing Skaven, something with loads of bodies on the table. Like realistically, how many bodies do most armies have that can go, you're not going to do anything in this game, you're just going to score me objective points, which is the key thing in the game. You need to score objectives to win, but most of the time you need to score the objectives whilst stopping your opponent scoring objectives and dealing with them with combat and shooting. So
you give them more questions to answer, aren't you? If you're just here, you're like, well, I'm here, I've tried to make a bit of a wall, come at me, and it's like you could do pretty much whatever you like. If you've gone over and you've pinned someone, you've damaged them, and you've wiped out a unit, even if you have left an objective behind, I mean, it's a bit of a reductive way of looking at it, but it doesn't matter if they're dead, right? Or if they can't reach you. And your ability to take your ovals and turn them sideways and actually have a pretty considerable like crescent frontage around someone's army is really high. Your bases are also deep enough, it's actually quite difficult for them to fly over, especially if you damage them a bit and their move profile's gone down. And all these things are very kind of... I don't think it's a particularly easy army to play at a high standard.
No, and I think as well, like when you think about like an objective, you've got like an objective point here, and you might be, excuse the microphone, you might be this side of the objective. If you're this side of the objective, you're still within 6. So if you're their territory side, you're still, the back of your base is still within 6. You're still contesting, but you're 5 inches even further that because of the size of your base, and you've got a 3-inch reach. So you could be like 12, 13 inches away from the objective, and you're still able to be hit, and they're still able to contest it. So you've got quite a big play around these because the base sizes. The little man crushers are really good at tagging objective. That's 10 models. One man crusher, that's 10 models. If you're in a taker tribe, it's obviously 15. It's even better. But what you kind of do is you say, well, come and fight me because you've got to kill me to get me off the objective. But that's quite a lot to get off. You know, to get one of those units off the objective is quite hard. So, you know, the OBR game, I didn't have magic. The magic I found was a little bit intimidating, particularly like some of the debuffs, but I still managed to power through it, and I won that game. The mission, it could have, I think if Carl had got the turn and played slightly differently with his cavalry, he could have double captured my home, but I still think by the end of the game we worked it out, I still would have won, because he didn't he'd lost. I've got enough movement to get back to the home objective, and I've killed whatever I'm fighting generally, because they just do so much damage, and it looks like they don't, but they really do. And especially the little unit of man crushers, they are the glass cannon, and I use them defensively. So they sat further back on the objective, chuck your rocks. They're the counter charge, and one of the big guys, normally one of the gate breakers, normally my general actually, would be the one forward just going, come and kill me, because they've got to commit models to that to fight it, and then you get to counter them. And you're never at a danger of a double turn because you've got less drops than them. I mean, if you play an army that outdrops you, slightly different story, but you've still got a 4-drop army, so there isn't much in the game that does outdrop you.
I think a lot of
if they're outdropping you... Sorry, I was going to say, if they outdrop you, they normally, at the moment, the armies that will outdrop you will just be a really bad matchup for you anyway, right? So you change host, you
potentially, yeah. The particular ones that have low drop armies at the moment are just terrible matchups, in my opinion. Yeah. But I've been not playing.
Quite a few of them would choose to go first, though. That does give you a chance of getting the double.
Yeah, I think there is a good point that there are some people saying you don't have anything to reach out and affect the game on turn one. Well, actually, what you can do is you can afford to be quite deep as well, because what it allows you to do is again about the objective capturing. You only need like 1 mil of your base within 6 of that objective to be 20. So it's not like if you've got a unit of 20 guys, you've got to be quite far up to all be in range, and you're further up the table. So you could be quite far back. You do have a shooting attack with the rocks. It's not amazing, but it does chip away. And you want to be patient. And the idea is that but against a shooting army, I mean, it depends what you're fighting against. I mean, obviously the range on Zinch stuff is quite short in comparison to KO. But I think they are difficult matchups. But just to finish off what I was talking about with that, so obviously, I think the strength really there in that game that was proven to me was the mortal wounds on the charge. That was the thing that really made a difference, and being able to snipe models. Again, this came up again, was very useful. The other game, the last game I played was against Flesh Eaters. Now, Flesh Eaters, they get in. It was a bit of a off the wall list. It was actually quite an interesting list. I think it's a bit better than running Gristlegore, but it had double Terrorgeist, Zombie Dragon, +2 to cast Unbind, Archregent, some ghouls, and basically it was in places of arcane power. And Dave was able to get off the triple run and charge on all 3 bats, and put 2 of them into. Well, he got one of them into my general on the middle objective. And went twice with +3 attacks, re-roll into wound, and didn't kill my mega-gargant, who left him on 2 wounds. So he didn't capture. I then counter-charged, kill his general and his other zombie dragon, so I killed 2 of his characters in one. And then from that was able to win out the game. But there was a lot of moments where I think I had 1 gargant on 2 wounds, I had 1 left on 3 wounds. I had 1 that was basically untouched, and then my little unit had lost 1 model. So I'd lost quite a bit, but I was still up on points, and I'd still ground off most of the army. So I think some dice rolls the other way would have swung the game a bit more. But again, it shows you the resiliency that you can take a 12 attack more, re-rolling, doing mortals on a 6, and all the other attacks, and survive that. Because even a fully buffed up zombie dragon, I think maximum damage is if you don't have the bonus attacks, it's just over 30 40 wounds or something like that. So
everything hits, everything wounds, and you fail everything, and it all becomes maximum. Yeah.
And well, I mean,
it could happen.
It's just hard to get that much damage, right?
Yeah.
Avlanor charge him 40 wounds. Durthu fully hits, fully attacked, fully buffed 36.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you get comboed with 2 very spiky damage things, probably going to lose a mega-gargant, but you would lose any unit in the game pretty much that was 35, 40 models that got double charged by 2 really hard-hitting things. The point is then your next thing comes in and can do enough damage to spike them off. I think it was an interesting game. I think the bravery was interesting because there's one point where 3 flayers screamed at my gargant that only had like 5 wounds left, and their bravery 7, so 2d6 take away 2, anything 10 or above is mortal wounds. I was thinking, oh, he didn't have a mortal wound save. I was like, this is a bit scary.
Yeah.
Luckily, didn't die. But again, it's that it was close. It didn't feel like it wasn't a one-sided game by any stretch of the imagination. But you get that with any army. You need a bit of luck, where you need it.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel outclassed, and I certainly didn't feel like there wasn't any game to play. So I think really what I'm trying to say is that it plays very well. Like and the thing that by reading the Battletome you don't get is the damage and survivability and the capture potential in a small footprint. Because if you take 130mm round base, you cannot fit 20, 30 models in that space, maybe on 25mm bases, but
if you're hitting each other, those 20 or 30 are going to be 10 or 15, and you're still going to be 20.
Yeah.
Until you've got 0 wounds left, you're 20, which is just... So you can't quantify that. We're used to saying they're 30 wounds, and we're taking a metric that we've measured normal stuff for, and it's not really applicable.
And you kind of have to just play very aggressive. You have to basically go in and go, I am going to just leave my objectives captured with nothing on them, and I'm going to go for you. Because if you come around me, I can run backwards because they're fast, movement 12, movement 11, 10, movement 8, run and charge, 24-inch range shooting attacks. To get around the army is quite hard, particularly because the threat range, if you're a bit spread out, there's pretty much everywhere on the board you can get to. And you've got to survive to hold those objectives for the game, and all the time you're not really after them, you're just going in and smashing. So yeah, a few bits. I think there's some misnomers, a few things I saw that I will talk about, little tricks. So one, you can walk over endless spells because they're a model and they don't have wounds so they don't have any wounds, so you can use long shanks to walk over endless, so you can't be trapped in. There's some people saying about the damage 2 doesn't make sense. I think we covered that, but it's to make them more consistent, I believe. They don't have access to low drop. They are low drop. They die too easy. That's not true. So I think there's a lot of stuff that people are saying that I think with gameplay, those are myths that get dispelled. Now, this is obviously a caveat. This is my opinion based on the games I've played and my experience as a competitive Age of Sigmar player. Other people are entitled to have their own opinions. That's completely fine.
The nice things about the hobby is everyone having different, everyone would be taking the same list if we didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just telling you what I think based on some actual gameplay and my knowledge and experience. And the reason for that really is because I've seen a lot of people out there disheartened, talking about cancelling their orders, don't want to do the army, they're really disappointed, they were so excited. Just give it a chance. Even if you don't want to fork out the £500 to buy it, proxy it. Give it a couple games with a mate, see how it feels. If you enjoy it and you're challenging them, then go out and buy it. I mean, it's no different than playing any other army that struggles with a certain match. If you play Stormcaster, you play against Mortal Wound dishing out Zinch, you're going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. I think I've already touched on it, but it's whenever something very different comes out, all we have to measure it are a load of metrics that are based on the state of the game currently. Now, the closest thing we've got is Beast Corps Raiders. They're really good. They're really combaty. They're pretty fast. They're fairly applicable. They didn't take it to this extreme, both in terms of how many wounds they are on an objective, how many wounds the models have, the damage, etc. And what we'd be applying would be fine if we were applying it to something that worked in exactly the same way. But like I said, we're like, here's your 35. Let's say someone's got a 4-up save 35 wound block, and you've got a 4-up save 35 wound dude. The moment this one's taken half a damage, it is no different. It's also not atrophied in terms of its damage nearly in the same way. This one is half as good, and it's now not beating this one in terms of scoring on that objective, and it couldn't have got enough stuff around the objective anyway. But we're just not used to having to evaluate things in that sense whatsoever. And there are I saw Honest Rob's got a review out there, and I saw a tweet as well where he said it's lacking. It doesn't ask any questions that there isn't an answer for already, or something about it being
doesn't do anything like unique, basically.
Yeah, we can pop the tweet up. I think it does a little bit actually. Those things like reach out and grab, that's within the game already, but that much reach out and grab is not within the game already. Plus mortal wounds, plus some damagey attacks at range. Now we're used to seeing things that are more reliable here, being on the hit spectrum, and less reliable or more savable here on the wound and save spectrum. You're just shifting that from this end to this end. And that means that less things are going to get through, but when they get through, they get through. So I think it's kind of it's just a matter of taking something, playing with it, and perhaps it doesn't perform in exactly the way that you're used to evaluating something. Run it out a second time and try and find which way you should be evaluating it and which way you should be playing it, because it might be completely different. Your hammers might be anvils. Your like aggro army might actually be a blob around an objective, kick it backwards football army, all this type of stuff. Nothing like this has existed before, and it's very hard to evaluate something that just is completely different.
I think it's an interesting point about the grab. So like we've seen it in like a Star Drake, and it's really powerful, but it's a single model. So what you can do with the Giants, or Sons of BEHEMAT, I should say, is you can put in a kraken-eater, man crushers and a kraken-eater. Now you do your attacks on one of your models. You've already done probably potentially 2d6 plus 3d3 mortal wounds, so whatever's left.
Not shabby.
Not a lot, probably. Then I know you people go, it's their whole army, but yeah, that's how it works. You put your whole army into their army, into what's there in blobs, and you kill it, and then you go into the next thing and you kill it, and you hope you don't take enough damage to fall over. But basically, you put two things in, right? So you fight with one, they pile in, fight you, then the next thing goes and can grab. You can break unit coherency because they've already piled in. The problem with a Star Drake, that they can wait to activate that unit until you've activated the Drake. Whereas with the Giants, you say, well, if you don't activate, then I'm going to kill you lots. And if you do activate, you're going to get double grab unit coherency being broken. And in a big unit like, say, for example, 30 Savage Aurochs, you could kill half the unit. As particularly with 3-inch reach, you could break the coherency and then hit over the top at something else and say, well, actually, you're going to lose half that unit. So I'm not going to keep attacking it because you're just going to take casualties off one side and then that side's going to go anyway. So I might as well just hit something else so I can hit multiple things. And, the reach on the army is incredible. You've got 3 and 2.
There's barely any reach everything. 2. Like, reach 2 is a minority reach within the army. Everything else is reach 3.
There is quite a bit of reach 2, but it's like stomps and like headbutts and things like that. But they've got good rend, they've got good reach, they're fast, and they are fast for what you're delivering. Because what you've got to imagine, it's like a big unit of infantry that's in a small space that can go 18 inches. It's like that's quite good. That's not bad.
Yeah. With a shooting attack and potentially a load of keywords as well, they might be Behemoth and Battle Line.
I think one of the things that you pointed out there, Russ, and I know it's like harping on the same thing, is that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get caught out by the grabs, because how many people have like pile-in discipline to go, I'm going to, in that situation, I'm going to pile in and just be smart about it and just like having stuff in a line, and you just go, cool, I'll just take those 3 and then they're gone. And then half the unit's gone. Pile-in discipline is a massive thing that people haven't had to think about before. How many, you may lose your kraken-eater in that situation, but most of the time people will maximize the amount of attacks on the thing that they deem as the most, the biggest threat. And then they've piled in a certain way. And I mean, you can even do it so that you can sort of if you're smart, make sure that they pile in the correct way so they stretch the unit out, which allows you to then activate and pick the stuff in the middle. Because if you're piling in is one of the most key elements of this game that I see people play incorrectly or don't think about. With which is the closest unit, how is that going to affect it? Do I pile in forwards? In that situation, you've got 2 kraken-eaters and the 3 guys in the middle. All you need to do is spread it, or when you charge, put it in certain situations so that they have to pile in to maximize the attacks on the kraken-eaters, which they're going to want to do. They're going to have to spread the unit to do it, and then you just take the stuff in the middle and you just go, right, cool, pick which one's dead.
It's definitely an army that rewards you handling priority, whether that's target priority or combat priority or the priority role, and punishes your opponent. Because if there's any situation where your opponent's fought before you, you've got a literal, pun intended, bag of tricks with which you could do quite a lot of different things. I mean, they could pile in with a huge unit, 40 models, you've already fought something else, you've got someone on the edge that can't fight that, and you could be like, well, I'm gonna pick off these models, so now you don't score that objective. I didn't break your coherency or anything cute, but I won what wins me the game this round.
And I think like the point is, you've essentially got 4 very, very aggressive things that if they fight you in multiple places, something's going to die before it hits you, generally. And because every unit is like having a big super unit, and although the damage output might not be the same as, say, 30 Witch Elves that are buffed, it doesn't need to be. It just needs to be enough to kill what's in front of you. And it is generally. Obviously, the Gatebreakers are probably the highest DPS giants in the army. But the kraken-eater brings so much with the kicking objectives. So I think I'll go into the list that we come up with, and I'll talk about why this is the list I'm going to sort of try out at the next time I play with them, and why I make these choices. And then I think we'll go through the scenarios, and then we'll talk a little bit about the meta. Sure. So obviously the Taker tribe, you can see it up on the screen now. So it's the kraken-eater as the general, and he's got extremely intimidating, and that's a -1 to hit trait. So if you're within 3, you're -1 to hit. That doesn't mean if you're hitting him, that's if you're within 3. So even if you're shooting, so if I charge a shooting unit and you shooting at me, I'm within 3, you're still -1. So it's very strong. I've given him the glowy lantern, that makes him a wizard. Now the reason I've gone for this is because having an unbind, I know you got no bonuses and it's a bit of a crapshoot, but having the chance to unbind something key, I think, is important, even if it's not very likely. It might be a 20%, 30%, but it's still rather have that than 0%.
Yeah.
If it's an endless spell as well, the bonuses aren't included there. You're just getting rid of a thing, aren't you?
Yeah. So I think having a way to get rid of an endless spell as well is important. So then I've gone for a Gatebreaker. Now the Gatebreaker is because I think being able to destroy faction terrain. He doesn't lose anything in a Taker tribe. In a Breaker tribe, the kraken-eater doesn't get the loathing. So, but in a Taker tribe, which makes your units count as more for capturing, it doesn't matter that you've got a Gatebreaker. He counts as 30 models for objectives rather than 20. So he gets a benefit. He's in there to be more damage, better ranged attack, in my opinion, because it's high damage, high rend, shorter range, able to shut faction terrain down. So he's the other thing. Now, what I've done is I might decide that this is too many points in stuff that isn't models, but 1 unit of 3 man crushers and 2 single man crushers. And then what I've done is I've put in chronomatic cogs and a command point, and I'm still 1950. So you get Renegade. It is a bit Renegade. I did see on one review they said that the throw rock ability for the Allegiance is a command ability. It's not. It doesn't cost a command point. It just happens unless you're in Stomper and you're trying to activate multiple units. But anyway, so the idea of this is you're -1 to hit on the kraken-eater, and he's your anvil, right? Now, what you can do is you can even put the 2 single man crushers adjacent to him, which means less models can get within range to hit him, and he can reach over the top of them anyway. Plus, if they're within range to hit them, they're probably within 3 of him to be -1 to hit. And what it means is that you're always going to be taking damage back, even if you one-shot a giant. Something's going to be within 3 to hit you back. So this comes like a little squad of quite resilient guys. Okay. Now, if you get chronomatic cogs off, you can slow time down and get a rerollable armor save and an extra spell to put Mystic Shield on the other giant or have a go at it anyway. It's on a 7. It's not very likely, but if you don't get it off, it's not the end of the world. The other thing you can do is obviously give you +2 move, and it'll give you +2 charge, which means that you could potentially be into them on turn 1, particularly on missions where you're 18 away. So if they go first and they leave themselves particularly open and you get cogs off, you might speed time up just to get in and go for the double kill shot. You still got the 3 man crushers and the Gatebreaker. They kind of just operate independently, or they can be together, whatever. the idea of command point is just because I had the points, and battle shock might be a thing for the man crushers, but it also allows you to do things like reroll ones on your save, reroll ones to hit, so it's still useful. Like actually using a command point on your big guy when they swing or when they save is actually quite useful. Obviously, you get a triumph more likely than not, which again is better than the command point because you get reroll hits or wounds or saves. But also in a Taker tribe, if you kill a model with an artifact, you also get a command point, so you can throw your rocks at a thing that is a triumph. So you could throw your rocks at something like a squishy hero of an artifact to try and kill them, to gain that ability, or charge and tag them and do mortal wounds to them, or hit over the top or whatever, if depending on what it is.
Kind of an interesting resource management, isn't it? You're kind of farming your own reliability stats. Yeah,
and the kraken-eater, I think, will be in every list, because even if you don't play, unless you're playing Stomper Tribe, but I think if you're playing any of them, you need a kraken-eater, and I'll explain that when I get onto the scenarios. So that's the list I'm going to try out. I wouldn't say it's massively stronger. I think it's got more tricks to it. I think it's got a little bit more play in it. I still think the other list is good, and I think this is the thing about the book. Every list, the free list we put up, the Stomper list, even in this list, you could have all those man crushers as 5 individuals because you've got all those extra points. And then you would have, obviously, you wouldn't be able to take the command point, or you might not take the cogs, or you might take a different endless spell, you might take an extra endless spell. But the point is, there's a lot of design around such a small army. And I think people out there who are like, oh, there's only 4 scrolls. It's like, well, yeah, there is, but each allegiance is viable in terms of Taker, Breaker, Stomper. Whereas in a lot of books, you go like, well, actually, only one of them is, like, you look at like it's Petrifex, or it's Praetorian, or nothing else.
Or
it's Hagnar,
Hain from
or
your Metrica, or Ithaca for,
So in my opinion, for a small war scroll book that has only 3 tribes and no battalions, I think this is actually internally more interesting than a lot of other books that have lots of these things, because it's got a lot of stuff in there you probably wouldn't take, or you don't consider, or it's very obvious which is better. Whereas this, I can't, in my head, I'm like, well, actually, they're all good in different ways.
Yeah,
and that doesn't.
There's no ivory host in the list, right?
Exactly.
You've got less choices and they all matter, which is kind of like how it is on the table, right? Don't have a magic phase, but your priorities are really important in combat. And when you're constructing your army, you've only got a few war scrolls, but you've got to really think about what they're doing, and then changing their temple tribe thing is going to hugely change the feeling of the army too. Yeah, and I'm really quite passionate about the fact that people are saying, oh, it's a really bad Battletome, and I completely, that's completely wrong. I think it's an amazing Battletome if you think about the design space you've got a very limited pool of stuff to play around with. The result, I think, is incredible for what you've got out of it, because and I'm talking about myself as a match play player that lots to play combat armies, and this is a combat army. I think this is better than the Beastclaw army. Like, I've played Beastclaw at an event. I think this is a better list, honestly, and lots of people did well with that Beastclaw and podiumed, and they said it was really good. I think this is better than the Stonehorn Beastclaw army, hands down. And importantly as well, you had a really good time with it, didn't you?
Yeah,
like, it's fun. You found it enjoyable. There wasn't a ridiculous amount of resource management, anything like that. You had a few key decisions that really mattered, and it probably is a good army to learn with and reward good play and teach you stuff.
And one of the things that my opponent said was that they feel scary. So, they feel intimidating. I mean, obviously, I was proxying it with a great and clean one of Zombie Dragon and a bunch of Necropolis Knights, but the point, obviously, there's nothing more intimidating than Tomb Kings, but I think that people were saying that they felt like they should feel. And I know there's been a bit of criticism about looking at the profile and the stats and going, they don't make sense from a background point of view, but I'd actually argue that the army plays like the background suggests. So I actually think it's quite good in that respect.
As an army, as opposed to in isolation per war scroll, I think it plays like expected to, and feels like it should.
And I think
when you're evaluating,
go on.
I was going to say, when you're evaluating stuff as well, it's all very well us saying it feels like this, but now I think we can move on to some maths, which is before Russ played some games. I said, if you do get the good roll of scenarios, it's going to be an extremely hard army to beat. And then from that, what we've moved on to is how many would you say are good, how many are average, and how many are bad. So I think we're going to look at the 12 out of the...
Yeah, so I've brought up an article I found online from a website called Goonhammer, where they've gone through the Generals Handbook, and I'm not going to go through the core ones as well, but it gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. So I'll go through the missions, and I'll tell you what I think, and I'm talking specifically, and I will caveat it with the Stomper tribe being a little bit different to the other lists. So Knife to the Heart, so you've got 2 objectives, and this scenario is gold for you, because you can basically put all your models on one, kick it forward, and just move up the table. And you know, they're not that far away from each other. You know, 2 kicks, it's probably going to be in a place to contest, be in a place to be near both. I think Knife to the Heart is a great mission for this army. It's very... Yeah, go on.
Who would say that about Knife to the Heart these days? Like, every time Knife to the Heart gets rolled at tournaments, everyone's like, oh. Whereas, like, if you're a Sons of BEHEMAT, you're going to be like, I hope they play Knife to the Heart. Because it's a good one for you.
For them to like have enough to contest those objectives around you, particularly if you're playing Taker, you're going to be like swinging your club for days, right? I mean, like, if you've got 2 big giants within range of that home objective, that's 60 catching power.
Yeah, they haven't changed. It's still auto win, right?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So go to turn 3. You've got 2 big guys near there, within 6 of theirs. You've got 3 little ones and a big guy near yours, and you're like, well, all right, come.
Squeaky bum.
It's like 45 plus 30. 75 on yours and 60 on theirs. Go on then.
Not too shabby.
You might lose a giant, but even a giant worth 30 is probably going to be able to capture, because we talked about getting that many models around that objective, so that's a great mission. Total Conquest, I think this is an average to good one, and the reason is a lot of this comes on you kill a model and they capture it, you kill them, you get more points. Try and come on and kill a mega-gargant and capture more, so you can almost leave something on your home and do what I call the sweep. So I talked about this in an article I wrote for GW, where I'll do it on the mouse, so you better see it. So you say you got your objective here, and then what you do is you hold this, and then you send your attack force round in a circle like this. And then what that means is you're effectively swinging around. And if you could even put like a mega-gargant just in range here, or like a small gargant, that's 15 models. That's quite a lot for them to contest. And if they're around this objective, you can then come and counterattack with your home force, depending on what's coming down the middle of the table. So you should be able to win out on that mission fairly comfortably. Then you've got Battle for the Pass, and I think I put this down as a oneer. And the reason for that is you take Taker, because immediately what you can do is this objective that's in your home, it's only worth 4 to your opponent if it's in your territory. So what you do is you kick it out of your territory, it's no longer worth 4 for your opponent.
Oh, that's great. It's the type of thing you just wouldn't think of, is it?
No. And it's only 6 inches away, so roll a 7, it's already out.
Yeah.
So they can never score 4 on your home objective. So straight away, and it's a Battle for the Pass is obviously lengthways, so they're more compact. You can go up the middle of the table with a mega-gargant on each side and contest both the edge objectives, and then plough onto their middle. And if you've kicked that forward, you're in a good position. I think it's a good mission for you. Starstrike is it's a weird one, because I should mention as well that in Total Conquest you're 18 inches away from their territory, so only 9, so that's good as well, so you're closer. Starstrike I think is a 2, and then people might think it should be a weak scenario because they could come anywhere on the table, these objectives, but actually they've made it quite a concise grid. Like it's in like a little box in the middle of the table, so they're not that far away, and they don't come down until turns 2, 3. Yeah. So actually, I don't think it's that bad, because you can concentrate on just going and killing, and not worrying about leaving stuff behind and protecting objectives, because there's none. So you could just be aggressive, which
makes sense. And those sweet times, that time when they land all in a line. then it's winner for you, right? As well.
Yeah, exactly. And then Scorched Earth. So this is a bit of a weird one. So like obviously there's a lot of objectives, so you think this might be difficult. Again, you can do some shenanigans with a kraken-eater where if you kick the objective into their territory, you can then burn one of your objectives. So over 2 turns, you could kick an objective from your 12-inch line into their territory and then burn it, even though it's yours. And that denies them a chance to burn for D3, and you've burnt one. So I think that could be quite good. Also, leaders score you extra points, and if you've got 3 mega-gargants, they're all leaders. So again, that's good. You can also they count as a lot of models, so I think it's quite easy to go out and burn their objectives. I think it might be worth protecting one of yours, going in and being very aggressive, and then following up with kicks. So I think it's one of those missions. Depends what you're playing against, but it might look on paper like a difficult mission to do, and it will depend a little bit on your army list because there's a lot of objectives. But I think with some clever deployment, because I think you can be positioned between 2 and still contest 2. Obviously, you can only choose to do 1, but they have to commit somewhere, and then you choose that one, and then so you could almost like Tetris your army a little bit. You might need to give up an objective, but if you've got a kraken-eater on one flank just kicking the objective up the table, then you're like...
The thing is as well, if you're between both objectives, how many armies out there can put 21 models, or sorry, you're a taker tribe, right?
Yeah,
so 30. So 61 models on one side of that objective and 61 models on that side of the objective, because they'll go, oh, I'm going to get this one. You go, okay, cool, I can test that one. Yeah. And then you go, oh, I'm going to get that one. You go, okay, I can test that one. Not many people can deploy 62 models to contest either one of those objectives.
No, exactly. And I think that's why you need the individual giants, which allows you to have more scoring units, so you can contest multiple things. And so I think that's the reason why I went away from 3 big ones, but I still think 3 big ones would be viable. Total Commitment was one of the missions I actually played. Scorched Earth as well is 18 inches away, so it's 9 from the centre line. So again, that plays into your hands a little bit. Focal Points again is a mission that is not Focal Points, Total Commitment, sorry. So this one is a little bit tricky because you've got objectives quite far away and spread out, so this is actually quite a tricky one. But I think there's no reserve, so you don't need to worry about people dropping from the sky and all that kind of stuff. And you can move the objectives, so you do get a benefit because you can try and start moving one of the objectives. They're quite far away, but you can move one objective towards the other objective, or deeper into your territory to make it harder. So then one unit can basically protect both of them because they're close enough together that you can go either one to attack whatever's capturing it.
You start fairly close to them as well, don't you? Even though they are far apart, you are within reach.
You're easily on top of them. So I found that, and again, it's it's a good one for that, really. Again, it depends, but I don't think it's a bad one. So it's middling.
No, okay.
Focal Points. I think this is a good one for you. They're all in the middle. Again, you can move one objective. So if you take this objective and move it into here, into this space, you're essentially creating a little pocket of 3 objectives. And guess what? You hold 3 and they hold 2. You can win the game, right? So the middle one's worth more. Protect the other 2. It's easy to do that if you boot that over. This is what I did. I booted this one over here, and I contested this area of the board, and then just attacked here with a mega-gargant if the opportunity arose. Good thing about this as well is Behemoths score more. Good news for you. And also you're 18 inches away. Good news for you. So again, that's a mission that I think is very good. Then, shifted objectives. Sorry, better part of Valor. I got these in a different order to my notes, so I do apologise. So again, this is a little bit more difficult because battle line. So battle line units, if you've got a Stomper tribe, this is an amazing mission for you because you're going to have like at least 3 man crusher units, and they're all battle line. If you're playing a breaker with triple mega-gargant, this could be difficult. Okay, it's just that's as simple as it is, really, because obviously you need battle line units to burn the objectives. So it's tricky, but they've still got to capture them, right? So it's basically it's a friendly battle line unit. So it's effectively difficult, but if you've gone for a Stomper tribe, this is a dream. And if you've got multiple units of Gargants, then it's okay. Fine, it's fine.
Cool.
Shifted objectives, I think it's quite good. Obviously, you're quite far away, and there's 3 objectives, but they're in the middle of the table. And you also score additional if you've got a battle line unit within 6 of the objective when you score it. And again, that's why I lent away from having 3 mega-gargants and having only 2. But I think that if you had 3, you'd still be okay. But I would be tempted to split the Man Crushers into 3 singles, which then means you can't have kraken-eater, breaker. You'd have to have a Stomper in there to reduce your points by 10. Otherwise you can't fit them. Places of Arcane Power. Actually great. I mean, they're heroes. And they just stand on them and getting a mega-gargant off one of those quite hard. And if you've got a kraken-eater again, you can start kicking it away from them or towards the middle. Or, so when I did it, I went up here and I kicked it this way to try and mean it was closer to the other one, just so, not that it really matters. I mean, you could actually kick it out of the way if you want, but...
Yeah, I mean, they're not 5-wound heroes, are they? So
No. And again, that's an argument for having 3 big ones, is that makes this mission easier, actually. But yeah, I think it depending on your list. If you've got a Stomper tribe, it's hard. I think it's either a middle or a good mission for you. Then Blade's Edge. So this again, I think is decent for you because they're all in the middle of the table. You've got a low drop army, so you probably get to dictate the turn at the beginning, and then obviously with the Blade's Edge, winning the turn roll if they go second, they burn an objective and things like that. So, and again, it's I think it's fairly okay. I think it's in the middle. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. And these are just my opinions. Force in the hand.
Yeah, and this is real world application, not necessarily there's nothing wrong with Tabletop Simulator, but this is like a real world application sort of thing where you be playing your opponent because anyone can buy 1,000,000 gun gun hodlers, and not everyone can purchase those and build them and paint them. Whereas on TTS you just click them and then they're all there, right? So I know that's what people are playing these days, but we talk about real world application in a tournament setting, as opposed to Tabletop Simulator, which is each to their own. People who do that knock themselves out. It's not for me. But
when I'm talking about the missions, I'm talking about them in context as, does my army list hinder or help me? Not does my opponent's army beat me, because I don't know what's on the other side of the table. So contextually, you might be in a great scenario against a mobile 1-drop Kharadron army and still screwed. So doesn't matter. But I'm just saying to you, if I look at my army list, I don't want to make games hard for me through list design if I can mitigate it. So that's why I'm talking about. That's why my follow-up list is a little bit more balanced, with 5 mini Gargants and 2 big ones rather than 3 big ones, because I think the balance of that, because of the 2 battle line missions and the ones with more objectives on the table, is more beneficial than having 3 big ones. Whereas if I do play 3 places of Arcane Power, having 3 big ones is just lol mode. So that's the context of that. So out of that list, really, there aren't really that many bad. I've got one Better Part of Valor is a bad one, because it's just, if you're playing Stomper Tribe, it's not okay, but then others become bad. But in my list, it's not a particularly good mission for me. Scorched Earth, I think it's good. I think the other one that's probably a bit bad is Total Commitment, and that's just because of where they're spread out. It forces you to play away from your mates, and you want to be playing as a blob. A lot of the other missions, they're not bad at all. I don't think
anything where you start closer is a potential gift with this army.
Yeah, and there's plenty of those missions. So you've got Total Commitment, Place of Arcane Power, Better Part of Valor, Focal Point, Scorched Earth, Total Conquest. They're all 18 inches away or 9 inches away from your opponent's deployment zone. So
shooting's going to be in range. You're going to get first turn charges if you decide to go first. If your opponent comes towards you, you're definitely going to get the opportunity to sweep around them or maybe hop over them.
Yeah. And then I thought I would look at auxiliaries. So obviously these are tiebreakers, so they're quite important, and maybe there's some of these that are really bad. And I know that most armies can't do all of these, and lots of them
more
feel
difficult than they used to be.
So it's like the aggressor. So I'll go through them. I won't go too much, but the aggressor control objectives in your opponent's territory. Depends on the mission, really. Control objectives, good at that, so I think that's all right. Pick an enemy hero and kill it. Could be really good, depending on the mission. Again, if you're playing hero capture mission, it's fine. I mean, a lot of these will dictate. Yeah, exactly. And if they've got a big character, like a big monster, then you go, well, all right, I'll pick your thing that you need to go and kill my big monster, and it's a hero capture mission. Depends. Then you've got bait, a friendly unit, get it killed before the third battle round. I think that's fairly easy as well, because you could pick one of your mega-gargants and be super aggressive with it. It might not die, which would be a problem, but you probably won the game anyway at that point.
If it doesn't, yeah, you're in a...
So it's like, they kill it, you're like, okay, well, that's fine, but if they don't kill it, you probably win in the major anyway, so it wouldn't make any difference. Cornered, get 2 or more units within 3 of the same hero. Quite difficult, I think, because you're probably going to kill anything that you're within 3 of, and don't have many units, so it's quite a difficult one. Defender, no enemy units in your territory. Depends what you play against. I think it could be easy, could be difficult. I wouldn't say it's any more difficult than anyone else taking that mission. Don't think being Sons of BEHEMAT impacts that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Domination, destroy 3 or more enemy units in 1 turn. Again, it depends what you play against, but they definitely have the potential to spike 3 units in 1 turn. So I actually think this is quite a good one for you, because
you've got damage in multiple phases, which I think is one of the most helpful things about that. You've got shooting, impact hits, combat, battle shot, potentially.
Lots of reach.
And pick out models and blah, 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 blah.
Grudge, pick an enemy hero and a friendly hero, kill the enemy hero yours. I think it's a bad one for most armies, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult one in general.
But your heroes do have shooting attacks, so you can chip off that wound or that 5 wound hero over a few turns. Like the kraken-eater with his 3 D3 damage shots. If you just pick something, you just go, well, I'm not really going to try and kill it with anything else. I'm just going to keep chucking rocks at it until it goes. And by the end of the game, you might do it. It's not an easy mission for anyone really to do. Headhunter, again, depends on their army, but you've certainly got ways to kill heroes, whether that's combat or bit of shooting, poke, or just charging them. But I think if someone's got lots of little 5 wound heroes running around, that's going to be difficult. But again, it depends on what you're playing against, rather than your army itself being bad. I mean, obviously, your opponent won't like to do that, because if you've got 3 mega-gargants, they're not going to get... It's like, I don't know about that one. Invader, at the end of the battle, have more units in your opponent's territory than they do. Depends on the mission. If you play Knife to the Heart, probably play that one, just because they're going to have to try and get you off that home objective. But again, it's not ideal because you don't have many units, but I don't think it's impossible. Marked for Death, pick an enemy unit that isn't a hero and kill it. I think that's fine. Like, you just pick a big unit and kill it. I mean, it's fine. Mass Panic, I think, is a bad one for anyone. I mean, you do have a bit of anti-bravery stuff, but yeah, it's Battle Shock. So 2 or more enemy units fail a Battle Shock. It's not easy to do that. Overwhelm, kill an enemy hero with a melee attack from battle line unit. Actually, not too bad, because your battle line unit is pretty good in combat.
That's the reach.
Yeah. So, and it's just an enemy hero. So I think there's going to be opportunities for you to achieve that one, particularly if you're playing Stomper. That would be a really good one. Pillage, pick a terrain feature in enemy's territory, get a friendly unit with wounds characteristic of 5 more within 3 of it at the end of the round. Pretty easy. You all got 5 or more wounds. So, Prey on the Weak, kill your opponent's battle line units. Depends what they're playing with, really. But you could definitely
kill
one
in general. Yeah, if they want to deny you that, doesn't matter what army you've got, they can stand something in the back corner.
Yeah, it'd be quite difficult for them to do that to you if you've got like lots of man crushers as well. So, Prize Possession, pick a friendly hero of an artifact, keep them alive. Thank you very much, that's very good. I like that one. Because especially if you're running that kraken-eater, that taker list that I put up, that face taker, as we would call it, take some face. But that list itself is -1 to hit guy with his 2 bodyguards is probably quite hard to kill. Seize ground, pick a terrain feature not in your territory, get 1 or more friendly units with by 3 by the end of the 4th. Yeah, it's fine again. I don't think it's a big deal. You've got big bases. It's quite easy to get near it. And territorial, when revealed, pick an objective, control it for 2 consecutive. I think that's fairly easy as well. And then vengeful counter, destroy an enemy unit in the same turn a friendly unit's destroyed. Again, I don't think that's too difficult. So I think the auxiliaries, they're not in there like that's auto done. But I don't think being Sons of BEHEMAT with the army the way it is makes those any harder or easier than anyone else. Which I think
they're just hard in general. I think, aren't they?
They're just certain missions, right?
Yeah. Certain armies are going to struggle against certain armies trying to get certain secondaries. Like, same as every other army in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Like everyone's going to have their challenges, right? I've got to believe that that's just how it is. You're
the Sons of BEHEMAT with the auxiliaries, they're not as any harder or easier than if you were playing a Lumineth army or a Mixed Order army or Cities of Sigmar army. Some of these you're always going to struggle with, and that's one of the key things with the auxiliaries, is just because obviously they're tiebreakers. In the good matchups that you get at a tournament, you'll try and make sure that you get maybe the harder tiebreakers. Get rid of the rubbish ones, and then in the hard matchups you then sort of like make sure that you get the easy ones, because they make a difference. If whether you score them as points in a tournament pack that isn't the GW one, or whether they're just tiebreakers, it's going to be that again is something that's not the army, that's you as a general deciding how you use that resource and play that's part of your skill as a general, as opposed to a downfall with the army.
I think so I think we've covered pretty much everything apart from the strengths, weaknesses, and an overview of in terms of the lists out there that are going to cause you problems. But I think that, again, I'd just say that this is based on my experience, my opinion. I think don't think the sky is falling. The Sons of BEHEMAT are a good competitive army. I would put them probably in the same bracket as War Clans, more tribes, maybe a little bit below OBR, but similar actually. If you're talking about combat, I think obviously OBR are a bit more flexible. I definitely think there are lists out there that will cause you headaches, but I play a lot of combat armies, and there are a lot of lists out there that cause any combat army headaches, and that's the same things. Shooting that you can't get to, that does lots of damage.
Chaff, but you've got nice ways to deal without the impact hits and with shooting, which is more than I can say having played recently.
Well, that's why I think they're actually a good combat army, because they can kill screens and they can snipe characters in a little bit.
Big difference.
Whereas a lot of armies I play can't, and you've got to just push through. And I think the other thing they've got going for them, which is unique to this army and no other army has it, is that it's the capture power in a small footprint, and I think that's so pivotal. And some of the missions where you can kick the objective into their territory and score more points is just funny, right? I mean, that's just what other army can do that? None.
Being unique is definitely a thing, I think, and people are going to have to learn how to position their units a lot. I think you're going to find some strange shapes on the table. If you're taking all your dudes and you're just putting them like canoes and running them up the table at people, you're doing it wrong. Like I drew the diagram for how to mitigate. So this is that's your minus to hit bubble, and that's a bodyguard, that's your main dude. But also, if you're not in some games taking 2 guys and running them as wings up here, you're not going to be able to restrict your opponent. You could be cutting off a lot of what they can do. Yeah, it does look like a butterfly. So you can, there's so many different ways and shapes to run an army that it's going to be really difficult. You can leave 2-inch bubbles between your guys, and the only way people are getting through is with charges and pylons. You can cover so much space just by doing stuff like that, and you guys are fast enough to be able to get through. Like, it's impossible to get stuff through there, and while your opponent's running through you, if you do happen to be on an objective, you're going to be scoring more than them. It's impossible for someone to be scoring more than you in a lot of different shapes, spaces, or whatever.
I mean, and the thing, like Age of Sigmar 101, isn't it? It's like you combo charge a unit, the one giant destroys that unit, the next giant piles into the closest model that you actually want to kill behind it with a 3-inch pile and a 3-inch reach, and then just bonks that on the head. It's like, it's AOS 101, that like the amount of times that people don't see that coming, where you go, I'm going to charge the screen. Does the mortal wounds happen outside of the combat phase as well, Russ?
You mean the charges? Yeah.
End of charges,
phase. Yeah. End of charge phase.
You combo charge the screen, you spike the mortal wounds on that, and then you both pile in and do the thing behind it.
Yeah.
It's just, it means that people are just going to line up and let you charge their screens. Then you're just going to wipe the screen and then get the stuff you actually want behind it.
Unless you might have a better charge as a result of that, especially, and you might be able to pile in a bit around.
This comes down to play, right? So they might just be 6 inches back, but then if you've outdrop them, you could get a double turn, which is what I did to James. But I think the point is that you do have tools, you do have options, and there are lots of these pesky defensive units. Like I know we talked about your Alarith list with the Ignore Ren 2, rerollable saves, going first. The impact hit, more wounds, don't care. Like the reach and kill doesn't care. Like you just kill model or 4 up, it's got 2 wounds, so.
I think that you caused me loads of damage, loads of problems with it. Yeah. When I played at the weekend with that Alarith list, I could pop the Aether Quartz, get myself a 3 rerollable Ignore N2.
Yeah.
But if you're combo charging with the Mortal Wounds, then you're going to, innately, because of the way that those models are on 32mm bases with a 1-inch reach, you need to stagger them so that you've got, you're maximizing your attacks, which then means that all it takes is you to get a couple of good reaches off, and then you split the unit.
Because you've got, you can't pile in much as well when you use these abilities. So you get a 1-inch pile in.
Only 1 inch,
yeah. So, I mean, I think that even if you put 2 models next to each other, so you say if I'm playing mega-gargants, put a unit of little ones next to a big one, it's quite hard to get within range of the big one to hit it without being within 3 of the little ones. So you immediately drop half your attacks that you could get in unless you draw them into combat. And if you draw the little ones into combat, because they've got a 3-inch reach, they can actually hit you, particularly if you deploy them sideways, as a stack next to the big one.
Yeah.
Because they can pile in this way, and this guy can fill the gap in the middle by twisting, and he could probably still hit something with his 3 inches. So, again, you do mitigate some of the damage, but the point is, it's still very strong. And I think the army is easy to write off and look at it and say it's 4 scrolls, there's no battalions, the attack's only damage 2, blah blah blah, all that, sky is falling, I'm upset, they don't have allies. Play some games, see how you feel. You might not like it, you might not like how they play. I love it. I've played 4 games now, I've bought the army, I'm happy. I don't get any commission or anything for saying this, I'm just saying it because I'm a hobbyist. I love the models. I'm going to do mine as a Chaos Giant Corrupt army, and I'm going to take some Night Desecrators and put some armor panels and stuff like that on them. Got some greater demon kits that I'm going to use for the weapons on the little ones, convert them up. Got the Beastgrave scenery to go on the bases, so do a bit of a hobby project. But I would take it to an event, and I just accept the fact that until we talk about the list that cause you problems, things that outdrop you, things that shoot you, things that have many small units that are mobile that can do damage at range is a problem. So like a Caradron, gun hauler heavy, lots of models flying high, running around is going to be an absolute nightmare. You're probably going to lose that mission. That's fine.
MSU eels, kind of
I'm not 100% sure the eels is a problem because they've got to fight you. And I know they could do mortal wounds and they could spike you. I think you get to counter charge. They've got low bravery. It'd be interesting to play that. I think I personally, I've never played Deepkin and gone, oh, that's just a horrible game. I think the only time that I really struggle with an army is when it does all its damage at range and I can't do anything to it.
Yeah.
So
I think 2 9s of eels you'd be okay with. I think if those eels are in 3s and then you're sort of you're comboing up and stuff, it's quite. It's different. I suppose then though you're not piling in outside of range, so it could be. I mean, it'd be interesting to play actually to see.
I say there's a game to play there. Yeah. I don't think it's. Yeah. I think if you're playing can't retreat, change host, shoot in magic, probably going to lose that. But most armies will lose that. I think some of the Seraphon lists will cause you fits. But again, I think they're in a weird place that they're probably a little bit too good at the moment. That might change in the future, who knows? And then you've got things like So OBR, didn't have a problem with them. Didn't feel like I was out of my depth. I think they're tough matchup, but still competitive against it. Big Waaagh, still felt like I could compete against it. Could have lost that. FEC, yeah, still good. I think, even like stuff like Slanesh, stuff that goes first, I think Luminef would be difficult, Sentinel heavy. But again, I still think there's a game there. So
yeah, here's a question that is like, and maybe it's what the listeners or like the watchers will be able to do. I mean, obviously we play Warhammer to, like, some of us on this call, to a higher standard than others. Like, we play Warhammer to a high standard. Now, do you think that your ability as a wargamer makes the Suns list easier for you to play, or do you think like an average wargamer could pick them up and still do it, or do you think that there's going to be a learning curve of getting into it? Like, they're not going to be pick up auto win because of the way they are. But like, obviously, you're a good wargamer. Like, you're an X-Master, even ETC winner. Your average Joe at the club may not see all of this stuff straight away and be able to apply that in the gaming sense, which is why maybe picking it up or proxying it and seeing how they feel would make a difference. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I affect their opponent as well. Sorry to just jump in, but like, if it's confusing for you, it's probably confusing for your opponent, and you should know your list better than they know your list. So I think that's going to be a factor.
I think it's a list that's simple but difficult to master. I think you, as a newer player, it'll be less to think about on your side. So that I think it'll be less noise for you to get distracted or miss things. I think it depends on the player. Like, some people get on with big monsters and combat armies. If it suits your play style, I think it'll, and you won't know that until you play with it, really. But I think it's a lot of fun. I think there'll be times when you might play a game and go, I can't see, in the combination of scenario of their opponent's army, my army, and my Battletome, I can't see a solution to that problem to make sure that if I play it again, I'll win. But I don't think it's going to be as prevalent as some people think. I think it definitely makes a difference being a better player, but that's the same with any army. I don't think the Sons of BEHEMAT compounds that issue any more than anything else. I just think there isn't an army that's like play the game by numbers, like an old style Sylvaneth army where you had a plan. It doesn't matter what they're doing, you just deploy it in the same way, and you learn all your sequencing, and you write on a bit of paper and you laminate it and you read it and follow the instructions, and then you get to turn 3, and then you have to scramble and think, and then you start getting overwhelmed and out of your depth, and you lose.
Mate, you just described my Warhammer for the last 5 years.
Yeah, but I don't think that makes you a good player. So I think as a newer player trying to get better, that gives you a very prescriptive thing that sometimes you'll win games because that worked. Well, as soon as it doesn't work, you have to think. I think the Sons of BEHEMAT requires you to have a good understanding of what's on the other side of the table, the scenario, and what you can do, and play it well. And I think that you will get there, and I think it will take time. But for me, I enjoy that challenge of you're almost giving yourself a gameplay issue by taking a restricted army, and that's why I tend to like armies that are either technical or they're very linear in terms of they only do shooting. They don't do shooting, they do combat and a little bit of magic, or they do buffs and combat, but they don't do every phase, because it makes the game challenging for me in different ways, and I enjoy that, and I enjoy that challenge. What I don't enjoy is when I look at the problem and no tool in my toolbox can fix it, or I've just got to accept that that's an hour of my life I'm not getting back. Now, that doesn't happen very often, and that might be me being short-sighted, so I still got to look at it and think about it and try and take my learning points away. The one thing I do really like about this army is your games are going to be quick. And actually your analysis paralysis of lots to think about and lots to do isn't there. So actually it allows you to focus on the mission, the game in front of you, what your opponent army's doing. And you do have key decisions to make, which is, do I move left or right? Do I put a point here or there? Do I go after that or not? And there will be a key dice roll, like you fail a charge. It's a big deal when it's a quarter of your army not charging. But these are just issues with the nature of the army. But at the same time, I think it's very forgiving because there'll be people that charge it, don't do enough, and you just kill them. So it works both ways. But I think as a newer player, I'd say that don't be put off. If you like the models, you like the idea of it, and it sounds cool, and you proxy it first before you drop 500 quid on something. At least play a little bit of theory with it. Roll some dice, roll some combats, play your mate, make sure they're not playing Quadron or Zinch, and play that and see how it goes. I mean, like I say, I'd be interested in the EO matchup. I'd be interested in seeing that Luminef matchup. So
yeah, we can have a game at some point. Like we got oodles of time, haven't we, at the moment? So I've got. I've got like a couple of lists that I want to like. I'll be thinking about with Luminef, but that I think could be a little bit interesting. I won't take the techless mortal wound bomb one. That's very, because it's like what's the point? It's like we just want to see how it works, and then we can play those super.
It's fine. I want to find out how it does, so it doesn't matter. Like
you may as well. Yeah, learn by
how many mortal wounds can you do to my army before it runs into you and kills you.
Watch this space. I guess we can report back on. We'll have an Aelguzzer Redux.
It's only going to take 20 minutes to play the game, and then I can re-rack in about 5 seconds because I've got 4 things. I can almost hold them 2 in each hand. It's fine, right? So, but army fits on top of my Battletome. It's all good. So no, I think I would just say that if you're out there and you've watched our videos and you've seen other things and you've been a bit disheartened and you think it's the worst army in Age of Sigmar and you're all annoyed because you're excited, just relax. The book's not out yet. We're in a position where we've luckily got a copy early and a Gargant early, and obviously that doesn't pay for our opinion. We still give our honest opinion. No. It's just nice to, obviously we're recognised to be supported by GW with samples of his ad, like many other channels are. If I didn't think they were competitive, I wouldn't be telling you, because I don't want you to go out there and buy something and then be like, oh no, this is rubbish. I was surprised how good they felt, and I would say if you play something like Beastclaw Raiders, Stonehorn Army, I think they're just as good, if not better in some situations. I think if you're playing Iron Jaws, I think they're just as good. They're just as good as an OBR combat army. Take more tech crawlers aside or whatever, or Catacross and things like that. But I think if you take like a more well-rounded OBR army, I think they're just as good. And I think there's lots of books out there that struggle in certain situations. I don't think they're any different. And from my point of view, my opinion is the Battletome is written very well because every option is viable and every tribe is viable, and there's lots of lists that I've come up with and I haven't gone, oh yeah, that's the list, and everything else is superfluous. Whereas in other books I can hone down on 1 or 2 lists very easily, even if they've got 20-30 war scrolls in them. So I would say it's very well designed, and I'd say give it a go. Let us know what you think. Put it in the comments. If you disagree with us, that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. But don't let other people telling you the sky is falling with no games, no practice, no context tell you they're bad. They haven't played with them. They haven't done it yet. You're only going to know if it's good for you if you play with it. So my suggestion is to find a friend that plays Warhammer. TTS is fine if that's how you play. Proxy it, play it, see how you feel. If you enjoy it, go out and buy them. They're awesome models. It's an awesome army. Don't be disheartened. It's your hobby. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And share us your painted models. We'd love to see them.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was a useful video for you guys out there that are excited about Sons of BEHEMAT. And thanks for checking it out. And we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.